for you. We see you as wealthy, with your work up to date, with plenty of money, with a great big house, rich, leading a simple life, a peaceful life, a joyful life, no shame, transcendent, and everybody love you, and you love everybody, and no sins, and no cruelty to animals, nor to people, and one with the greatness that you really are. You don't really know your greatness, because you don't go and spend your time alone with God and hear it. You hear other things that make you think you're not great. So one with the greatness that you really are, and living the full richness of the beautiful person that you truly are, and this is our vision for you, and we're answering the call, and we have for you the ecstasy of teaching others to answer the call, and full of fun and cheer and beloved, you, popular, applauded, appreciated, and praised. That's the good news we have for you. Quickly, how do you do it? You spend your alone time with God the first thing every morning. During the day, you count pure thoughts, like these beautiful thoughts right here. You pray for your enemies, and every 15 minutes you rejoice about something. We just passed 9:15 a.m. What are we going to rejoice about? A blue sky, sunshine. First time in what, 7 days? And we rejoice that we're feeding the birds and squirrels, and we rejoice that you and I have each other. You do a lot for me when you call me up and tell me about yourselves, and you do a lot for me when you ask for the happy book. Call for a free happy book. I don't know how many there are left, but I think we've got one to cover you. That's the deluxe edition, which is plastic, and this is the poor man's edition. Well, we're all poor, so it doesn't make any difference. And this is a copy of my directions for the Sony, how to operate the Sony camera, which I've never mastered. I want to thank James Correa in Seymour, Connecticut. He stood by me when the cable operator sent out those odious papers, and he called them threatening, about public access, which don't amount to a hill of beans. There's nothing there of any substance, but when they scare people. And when they sent him that to sign again, and the poor man just signed 4 weeks before that, he stood by me. He didn't run off. He signed the papers and he sent them right back in. And he did that 2 weeks ago. And the cable company was really wrong to take the program off of TV already. This is in Seymour, Connecticut, Telemedia, soon to become Comcast. But he stood by me. And so we thank James Correa for that. And for his nobility, and for his hearing the right thing to do. Jokes? Well, I got these kid jokes. They're kind of funny. They were given to me by my neighbor Daniel, and I thank Daniel for this. But I think they're kind of funny. The children had all been photographed, and the teacher was trying to get them to buy the group picture. She says, just think how nice it will be to look at it when you are all grown up and say, look, there's Jennifer, she's a lawyer. There's Michael, he's a doctor. And a small voice in the back of the room rang out, and there's teacher, she's dead. A little girl was talking to her teacher about whales, and the teacher said that even though the whale is a large mammal, it has a small throat and it could not swallow a human being. And the little girl stated that Jonah was swallowed by a whale. Irritated, the teacher reiterated that a whale could not swallow a human. It is not physically possible. And the little girl says, well, when I get to heaven, I'm going to ask Jonah. And the teacher said, well, what if Jonah went to hell? And the little girl says, then you ask him. A kindergarten teacher was observing her classroom of children while they were doing a drawing, and she went around desk after desk to see how the children were doing. And she said to one little girl, "What are you drawing?" And she says, "I'm drawing God." And the teacher paused and said, "But no one knows what God looks like." And without missing a beat or looking up from her drawing, the girl replied, "They will in a minute." A Sunday school teacher was discussing the 10 Commandments with her 5- and 6-year-olds. After explaining the commandment to honor thy father and thy mother, the teacher asked, "Is there a commandment that teaches us how to treat our brothers and sisters?" And without missing a beat, one little boy said, the oldest of the family, "Thou shalt not kill." One day a little girl was sitting and watching her mother do the dishes at the kitchen sink, and she suddenly noticed that the mother had several strands of white hair sticking out of her brunette head. She asked her mother, "Why are some of your hairs white, Mom?" And the mother replied, "Well, every time that you do something wrong and make me cry or unhappy, one of my hairs turns white." The little girl thought about this revelation for a while and then said, "Mommy, how come all of Grandma's hairs are white?" A teacher was giving a lesson on the circulation of the blood. And the teacher says, "Now, boys and girls, if I should stand on my head, all of the blood would rush to my head and my face would turn pink. But when I'm standing right here now, all of the blood doesn't rush to my feet. Why is that?" And the class said, "Because your feet aren't empty." The children were lined up in the cafeteria at a Catholic elementary school for lunch. At the head of the table was a large pile of apples, and the nun put a sign on the apples that said, "Take only one. God is watching." So down at the other end of the line was a big platter full of chocolate chip cookies. And a little girl put a sign on there that said, "Take as many as you want. God is watching the apples." Well, thank you, Daniel, for such good time on these funny things that happen in life. It's 9:25. We're going to rejoice anyway. We're going to rejoice that people laugh. People are the only people who laugh. People are the only creatures who laugh. Cats don't laugh, but then they purr, and we can't purr. Dogs don't laugh, but then dogs have a tail, and we can't wag our tails. We don't have any. We don't even have a vestigial tail. I guess we do. The coccyx is a vestigial tail. But people laugh, and it's the funniest thing, and nobody can explain it. What makes you laugh? But we all laugh. And I deal with people all day long who may be under a torrent of troubles, yet if you tell them a joke, they will laugh and laugh and laugh. And my father, when he was dying, and I showed him a cartoon about a cat, and he laughed. It's the most wonderful thing. So that's what we will rejoice about, that people have a sense of humor and they laugh. So that's the good news for today. That's the good news for today. Be a captive no longer. Spend your time alone with God the first thing in the morning. Have pure thoughts, count your blessings, and pray for your enemies. Free yourself from bondage. And you heard the vision that I have for you. Perfect, happy, wealthy, all cleaned out inside, squeaky clean inside. Whatever you've done wrong, you've admitted, you've apologized, you've made good for it, and you're reformed. You atone for it, and you'll never do it again. So you're squeaky clean inside. That's how I envision you after you do all your jobs, like being alone with God and keeping your thought pure. And you are one with God, leading yourself to be one with God and leading others to be one with God. Stop the cruelty to animals, stop the injustice in the courts, and sue judges when they break the law. God bless you all, and I believe that God has blessed you. And thank you. Take care of yourself. You're a special creation. A lot went into creating you. You're very, very special. Find it. A hymn. The sun shining tomorrow after the darkness is gone. Here's the hymn for you today. In Christ there is no east or west, in him no south or north, but one great fellowship of love throughout the whole wide earth. You know, there wasn't a bit of snow on the ground before snow number 10 came. And look at that blue sky, and I don't see any aerosol. I don't see any poison exuded from jet airplanes. Let's go see what the thermometer says. Yep, 32. Melting. 1980 Lincoln started right up, and for the first time in his life, he has a flat tire. So I'll ask Bob at Walmart to come and fix it. How do these blueberry bushes live through these winters? This is big legal paper to the United States District Court, District of Idaho, Glendora versus Stephen J. Taman and 40 other defendants. It's being printed. There's at least 3 or 4 more sheets to write on it. The children had all been photographed, and the teacher was trying to persuade them to buy the group picture. She says, think how nice it'll be, children, when you grow up and you look at this picture and you say, there's Jennifer, she's a lawyer. There's Michael, he's a doctor. And a small voice at the back of the room rang out, and there's teacher, she's dead. And here's a pure thought. Let your oneness with God be adamantine. Adamantine. Can you spell it? A-D-A-M-A-N-T-I-N-E. Incapable of being broken, dissolved, or penetrated. Immovable, obdurate, impenetrable hardness. Folks, I missed the good news this morning of the red sunrise. We thank you for the night, we thank you for the rest, we thank you for the sleep, and we thank you for the pleasant morning light. And, of course, we rejoice that we have a new day. I finished this great big book, 140 pages, all about the evils of the Federal Reserve System, the Federal Reserve Bank. You know, it's not federal. It's a private corporation. And it's run by the international bankers. And they took away our right to coin our own money And now they just hand out paper money, and they put out a lot of it if they want, or they put out very little of it if they want. And they make depressions, and they make booms, and they make wars. 144 pages. And I've been weeks reading it, weeks and months. And they make the money out of nothing. They make the money out of nothing. They loan it to the United States government. And then they charge the government interest. And now the government is so in debt over its head, how could it ever be paid? Over $5 trillion federal debt. And they drained Fort Knox. They took all of the money out of Fort Knox. All of the gold. Mysteriously, clandestinely, stealthily. And never told us. And then we went to find out and get an audit. And they blocked the audit. And they cheated on the audit. And our gold that Roosevelt, FDR, made us relinquish. All the people had gold in 1933. If they didn't hand it in, they'd get 10 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. And so the gold that was all put in Fort Knox isn't there anymore. It's not there. And the government won't let us go in and inspect it and see it and find out for ourselves. And the gold that is there, a little bit that is there, is not 99% pure. It is the coin money that Roosevelt stole from us in 1933. And they won't answer our questions. Now, you see? And oh, also about the Federal Reserve System, reverse system. You can't know who's on the board, but who it is the international bankers, the Rothschilds, the Warburgs, the Lazard Frere, Goldman Sachs, Lehman Brothers. It's all these, David Rockefeller, it's all these international bankers. And the Federal Reserve System is not a private system. I mean, it's not a public corporation, it's a private corporation. And guess what? You can't audit the Federal Reserve Bank. Now, isn't that a terrible thing that they put through in 1913? The Federal Reserve Bank, this Federal Reserve System, this private bank. And then when the Federal Reserve gives the banks, the other banks, money, they say they give them $100, okay? That the banks can loan out that $100 10 times without having the money to back it up. And the loans that they made, the banks made, and do make, are not backed up by money. And that's called fractional reserve banking. And it's a cheat, and it's a lie, and it's a scam. The whole thing's a scam. We have been swindled, folks. We have been cheated. We have been lied to. Things have got into the wrong hands. The international bankers have robbed us. And they make wars, and they make booms, and they make busts. And what else has the Federal Reserve System done? Or the international bankers done? They've done a complete job of ruining the courts. there is no more justice in the courts. There is no more justice in the courts. The seal of the United States just stands for cheating. And they've ruined the Supreme Court of the United States, and they've tried to bury the Constitution and your constitutional rights. That's what the international bankers have done. Look at the poor blueberry bushes. How do they live through it? They did last year. This is such a big legal paper, folks. We've had such big legal papers. 23, 24, 25 of them. Look at how big this is. This is Omnibus 27, and it's in the United States District Court. District of Idaho. And this paper that I'm about to read you is going to the clerk of the court. And to Elliot Spitzer and Lisa Gardy, who did a horrible job on a mock defense of the New York State defendants. It's going to Robert C. Grisham, who is the United States Attorney, Assistant United States Attorney in the District of Idaho. Look at all the crazy stamps, because the Postal Office goes up on its rates before it has the stamps to supply the public. Now, I like the Post Office. I only have 2 Post Office jokes. But this is a dumb thing that they did. This is a courtesy copy to the United States District Judge there, Edward J. Lodge, to whom the case has been assigned. This is Brian Gay Julian. The lead defendant, Stephen Taman, is a town justice in Phillipstown, County of Putnam, State of New York, and he hired a lawyer. A judge hired a lawyer to represent him. Okay, that's the first 5. And here's the next 25. I figured that this is going to cheer you up, folks, because I sued about 20 judges and a bunch of clerks and the people who rob us of our blue sky by expelling ethylene dibromide out of the exhaust systems of jets. And I sued the New York State courts for ruling against cameras in the courtrooms. Your courtrooms. You have a right to know what's going on in your courtrooms. So I thought this would cheer you up. Deborah E. Cox started the one in Phillipstown by going back on her word that she would sign for a chat with Glendora and Peekskill. Stephen G. Taman is the lead defendant. I told you about him. C.J. Boudin is the Chief Judge of the United States Court of Appeals for the First Circuit in Boston. You will hear his sins in a few minutes. Jennifer Oyala took a chat with Glendora from 2 hours down to a half hour in Cross River. Christine Savarino was probably the instigator of that, and her abettor and accomplice. William M. Savino and Rifkin and Radler, a law firm and a lawyer out in Nassau County, who misrepresented and lied and cheated in Kelly Bernass versus Cablevision Systems Corporation, and Arthur Spat showed no Americanism at all and dismissed the case, and it is on appeal as of now. Diane Bennett and Alyssa Amato for dropping a chat with Glendora down from 10 p.m. Friday nights in Nassau County to 4 p.m. Now, all Jane Does and John Does, and the Johnson and the Environmental Protection Agency for robbing us of our blue sky. The State of New York Supreme Court Appellate Division, the Court of Appeals in care of Judith Kay, the Chief Judge of the State of New York, for taking cameras out of the courtroom, video cameras. Now let's see what we got. Let's take about 5 of these. This paper has taken 9 hours. 9 hours! And the expense on it is something like $80 to print and post it. This is Lawrence Goldman and the New York State Commission on Judicial Conduct. Their job is to protect you from bad judges. They do not. Robert M. Callaghy, the liar for hire, and Sadly Stevens, Burke and Burke for Cablevision. I haven't heard from him lately. I wonder if he's been fired. He should be, because he let me get a default judgment against Cablevision, Cecilia, in the White Plains City Court. James C. Torres and David DiMarzio and Blank McCabe and Blank Flanders and the intake clerk who lost the $250 in the dumb, obtuse Providence Federal Court. Thomas McAvoy, a United States District Judge in Binghamton, New York, who ruled that Time Warner did not have to have a TV studio for call-in shows for public access. He hurt me and my friend William Houston, so he has been sued. Sandra Sotomayor and Regina Raji and C.J. Hall are all United States Circuit Judges for the 2nd Circuit in Manhattan, who ruled for McAvoy, the district judge, and against Bill Houston on the matter of public access. William Flynn and all of his abettors and accomplices. The New York State Public Service Commission, who sells out to the cable operators and doesn't stand up for us little folks. And these are the people who did it right here in front of your eyes. Figliosi, Shea, Ann Dawson, Isabella, Hume. So make sure this show goes to Albany on Time Warner. And Christine Savarino, who has ever been the worst enemy, one of the worst enemies of public access that I know of. Cecilia Mastrovilli, upon whom the sheriff has served an execution, an income execution to take it out of her pay, the $5,000 judgment that Glendora won against her for messing up a chat with Glendora for years, and in several municipalities, Yonkers, Yorktown, Peekskill, Ossining. And I think we're down to the last 5. CJA, Great American Hero, Elena Sassar. Arnie Engen, who tells you what's going on in the United States of America that has been taken over by the international bankers, by foreigners. Edward Whitney, who does a good job on the same. George McDermott in Washington, D.C., who has not really succeeded in keeping a chat with Glendora on public access in the District of Columbia, nor on Prince George's County public access in Maryland. Albert LeBrun, who has been terribly victimized by a ring in the courts that come up with a false injury and then go after the person's house, and they have a $100,000 lien on his house and a $90,000 on his business, his office. Miriam Lisi and Lincoln D. Allman, 2 United States District Judges who violated the United States Code. No magistrate can handle your case unless you give them your consent in writing. They just don't seem to know that. And Cecilia, we did. Cecilia's the one who has persecuted his chat with Glendora in conspiracy with Christine Savarino and Jennifer Oyala for years. Now, Mr. James Reynolds and his accessories, Mid-Hudson Cablevision and Rob Johnson and Lori Pulver and Stuart Smith and Mid-Hudson Media have not only have they violated all of the public access laws, but they have become fugitives since they were sued in the United States District Court, District of Idaho. And everything you send them, the fugitives and cowards, return it. Return it. So, what's the fix for a fugitive? You put it in a 9x12 open envelope so everybody can see it on the postal trail, and show them that they are fugitives and cowards, and that they don't know the first thing about the courts or how to handle a lawsuit against them. And so I made a motion for instant default judgment against them and an order for contempt of the court. So see now, here come the memorandum about to be read to you, an omnibus memorandum about to be read to you on all of these judges, clerks, and recalcitrant cable operators. And I sued in accepting Stephen Toman, who appeared and hired a lawyer in Idaho. The judge hired a lawyer in Idaho to defend him. Now, look at this. Here's a whole page as to how this paper was filed electronically. And then it says, the following does not apply to pro se litigants. Then why do they put it in there? And they said they served it on Glendora. Why didn't they serve it on Gardy and Spitzer, the Attorney General for the state of New York? So, up here, this is the envelope it came in. Under penalty of perjury, Glendora avers that she served these 12 pages on all defendants and upon Grisham, Julian, the lawyer for the judge, Toman, Gardy, Attorney General, State of New York, together with a courtesy copy to U.S. District Judge Lodge. Service was by U.S. first class mail. At an oppressive new rate, postage rate. This is Opus 1344. At this point it had taken 7 hours. Now it's up to 9 hours. At a cost of $32.19. Thank you for waiving the cost of service of summons, Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 4D, Glendora. And now, this is a motion to the court. It says Glendora applies to the United States District Judge Lodge for instant judgment by default upon the James Reynolds defendants. In arrogance and in ignorance, they have defiantly refused legal papers served on them. Page 12 exhibits are such refusal. Glendora has several others, and this was dated January the 26th, 2006. Yours in truth, and an Armo Patria Glendora, and the return date for this motion is February the 14th, Valentine's Day. The estimated internet number for this program is 4,250, edition 8. Let's see how close I come. Usually I don't come very close at all. And its application to the court for instant judgment by default upon the James Reynolds defendants. Order of contempt. And you saw that I put that on the outside of the envelope so that, okay, so they refuse it. I don't know how they can, but they refuse it, and everybody's read it, and so have they. What did they gain? Here's a copy of one of their many refusals. Now, Stephen Toman, who is a town justice in the town of Phillipstown, Putnam County, state of New York, writes to Glendora and said, did you see the order from the appellate term, Supreme Court, state of New York, 9th Judicial District, that your appeal against him Ecock gave me her word that she would renew as a signer for a chat with Glendora and Peekskill, and then she went back on her word, and that's okay with Stephen Toman. That's okay. There's no such thing as a breach of contract. That's fine. Nothing's wrong with that. As I said, Stephen Toman is a nice man, but he is improperly influenced. So he wrote this letter to me. Did I know that that brief of that appeal in the appellate term, second department, was dismissed? So I wrote back to him, thank you for your letter. The appellate term was wrong to dismiss my case. I submitted it timely, but they said I had to serve the lawyer, Callaghy, and not the appellee. They are wrong. No lawyer ever appeared in the appellate court on this case. Then they were wrong to say it did not matter. Of course it matters. A lawyer has to file a notice of appearance. The appellate court is different from the Phillipstown court. They're two different courts. So if Callaghy appeared in the Phillipstown court, he didn't necessarily appear in the appeals court. In all my other appeals, I did not serve Callaghy, and it was accepted. The record is on my side. You just have to go through and look at Glendora's cases, and you will find that Callaghy was never served because he never appeared. He has to send me a notice of appearance. He has to send one to the court, and he didn't do it. So the appellate term is wrong. There goes Jane Dean and Daisy having their walk down the country road. Daisy is blue eyes. She's a beautiful dog. She's like a teddy bear. She's a husky. But I went along with them. Glendora tells Philip, town justice, Stephen Toman. They sent me a form, a motion to enlarge the time to perfect the appeal, and they said, quote, we treat this automatically as a motion to vacate the dismissal. So I made the motion, an affidavit in support, and had it served on Callaghy by a third party. So that is where things stand, waiting for vacatur, and then serve over again. The wait is 6 to 8 weeks on the motion to vacate. I hope you are well, and I wish you and the clerk the best for the new year. Yours in truth, Glendora, January 27, 2006, Anno Domini. Now, we go to another defendant, in this case, Omnibus 27 in the United States District Court, District of Idaho, and that's the First Circuit. That was Bodine, Chief Judge Bodine of the First Circuit in Boston. I sued the David Rockefeller Bank David Jackson, the president, J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, and the manager Sue in Patterson, New York, and Carlos Gutierrez, the CEO of Kellogg's, for ruining Worthington Foods products, vegetarian products, for ruining grillers, and for ruining Wham, our vegetarian ham. He just ruined it. He took it over from Worthington, and then to put the money in his pocket, he put cheap ingredients in and ruined the flavor and the texture. And Fry Chick also. And I sued Kellogg's North America. And I sued Daniel Dominguez, a United States District Judge in Puerto Rico. Unbelievable violations of America. And Arthur D. Spat, another one, United States District Judge in Suffolk County, Long Island, for what he did on Burness versus Cablevision. I sued Joel M. Plum and Gino Agnello, the Chief Judge and the Chief Clerk in the United States Court of Appeals for the 7th Circuit in Chicago, and Lawrence Pearsall, a United States District Judge in South Dakota. And I sued Joseph F. Battalion, a United States District Judge in Nebraska. And I sued Elliot Spitzer, the Attorney General of the state of New York. And Monica Cannell, a hack who works for him. And William W. Wilkins, who is the Chief Judge of the United States Court of Appeals for the 4th Circuit in Richmond, Virginia. Well, I sued all of them in the United States District Court in Providence, Rhode Island. Deficient Dominguez pathetically dismissed the case, made at least 20 errors and at least 20 violations of due process. But did I appeal it to the First Circuit, the Puerto Rico case? No, of course not. The First Circuit is totally dysfunctional. Abominably, abhorrently dysfunctional. There's no point in going to the First Circuit and paying $250 for their slop. But look what I get in the mail on Tuesday. United States Court of Appeals for the First Circuit, Glendora Plaintiff Appellant versus so forth, defendants appellees that I just read to you. Notice of default and intent to dismiss the order of the court. And it's an order of the court. I didn't even appeal. I did not appeal. You have lied, I tell them, and cheated again. Glendora never appealed Glendora versus the David Rockefeller Bank at all. And this is Margaret Carter, and it's not even signed. And it is not even an order. You know why it isn't an order? Because it isn't signed by a judge. A paper is not an order until it's signed by a judge. And she has no signature, so the whole thing is a nullity. But what bothers you is down at the bottom. Where did they send it? They sent it to my defendants. So my defendants would believe their lie. Well, they're not going to get away with it, because we have opposed it here and now. And Glendora has never known an appellate court to notify all defendants appellees. They are defendants, they're not appellees, because for the 5th time Glendora never appealed. Appealing as she is, she did not appeal this one. I have 4 appeals in the appellate term state court, New York, at the moment. Now, Glendora versus the David Rockefeller Bank et al. Glendora told you that once. She telephoned Circuit Executive Gary Wendt, and she told him twice. He asked for a letter, and she wrote the letter, so that's the 3rd time. This is not clerical error on your part. You have ever a sinister motive. I'm talking to the First Circuit, the United States Court of Appeals in Boston. Was ever signed by her, and you produce a $250 receipt for a filing fee. You cannot. First Circuit, Boston. Or an IFP, Informer Pauperis. No one, not one, was ever submitted. Now, Glendora speculates you will perpetuate the same fraud with Glendora versus Tata et al., which was filed in the Puerto Rico court. You did this same lie and this same cheat in the year 2000 with Glendora versus Ralph K. Winter, one of the top 10 most crooked judges in the federal court system. Second Circuit, Manhattan, Southern District of New York. Add to these slings calling Glendora an incarcerated litigant, when she is not and never has been. Then we have Stearns, a United States District Judge in Boston, who dismissed a case in the United States District Court in Chicago. Now how's that for acumen? How's that for acuity? A United States District Judge in Boston named Stearns dismissed a case in the United States District Court in Chicago, or at least he wrote a paper saying so. You know that that's impossible. A paper has to be signed by a judge before it is an order. And another lie and another cheat, add another lie and another cheat to your record. Glendora is 8 or more attempts, has never known the First Circuit to do anything accurately, adeptly, proficiently, honestly, ethically, morally, or with skill or professionalism. No First Circuit. You never have. Your record is self-surrender to vice, open and shameless disregard of decency, utter laxity of morals, no restraint, complete insensitivity to reproof, vicious vow, graceless, shameless, and unprincipled. That is you, the First Circuit in Boston, the United States Court of Appeals. You are doing or have done exactly what the international bankers want. Take courts away from the people. Totally denude them of justice as stealthily as they emptied Fort Knox of the people's gold. They're only doing what the international bankers have paid them to do. Thank you for making my case against the Chief Judge Bodine pellucidly graphic before the Idaho Federal Court, where Glendora sued him November the 26th, 2006. Glendora will send her expose of your crime to all people you listed, order CC, and to all other defendants, together with all defendants, including Bodine, in the Idaho Federal Court, and to the U.S. Attorney there, Grisham, and to Gardy Spitzer, the Attorney General of the State of New York, and to Julian, the lawyer hired by Town Justice Stephen Tuman. Again, thank you for arguing my case against Bodine and Idaho. Glendora would never waste hours, dollars, and ergs appealing to the First Circuit. Next is reserved. Under penalty of perjury, Glendora has told you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help her God, and you have not. Dated January the 7th, 2006. There's a signature you can read. And there's our new rubber stamp. Our new rubber stamps has a platform, folks. Lead people to be perfect, stop the cruelty to animals, and stop injustice in the courts, and sue judges when they break the law. This is Opus 1346. I think it's going to take 3 hours. It's not quite finished. And the paper ends with a nice moment. Bob Hope and Glendora. The new rubber stamp says Glendora is on 51 TV stations, but just as soon as the stamp is made, it's now 52. Number 49 was Bolton, Ellington, Hebron, and 5 is Tolland, 5 or 6 other communities in Connecticut. Number 50 was Seymour, Connecticut, Oxford, Shelton, Ansonia, Derby, and 4 or 5 other communities. Number 51 was Meriden, Connecticut, and Cheshire, and Southington, Cox Cable TV. Number 51 was what? Or did I say that was 51? Anyway, number 52 is Houston, Texas. Chat with Glendora is on TV in Houston, Texas. Now, what are we going to do with these people? Did that cheer you up, suing all those judges and suing all those clerks and standing up for right and not letting them get away with it? Did that cheer you up? Maybe not. For all of those people listed, carefully detailed just now to you, let us say a prayer. Let us say that every one of those people get down inside of themselves and clean themselves out. That they get rid of everything dirty, ugly, immoral, unethical, nasty. Get rid of it, and that they be squeaky clean inside. And let them rise above all of the evil that's inside of them and rise above the evil that's outside of them. And as they rise above that evil, let them lift everybody else with them up to the oneness with God. Hey, we could get 50 people there on our side, on the good side. What else do you want to say in this prayer? That they realize that they are very special creatures. And they are made with very special set of talents to do good in the world and to do God's work. And that they are very, very unhappy. And by being cleaned out and finding the thing that they were made to do, they will be very, very happy and very rich, very wealthy. They'll have everything that they want. They'll have the applause, the appreciation, rich, famous, popular, successful, great, respected, praised, applauded, admired, cheered. They'll have all that. So we pray for those people. And we will sing them a hymn. Since the batteries wore out here, my batteries are still going. In Christ there is no east or west, in him no south or north. But what? But one great fellowship of love throughout the whole wide earth. And we have. We've gone to the international bankers in the last 20 minutes. We've gone to the district court in Idaho, the First Circuit in Boston, the Fourth Circuit in Richmond, to the court in Puerto Rico, to the federal court in Providence. We've gone. And to all of those people, one wide world fellowship of love. Got some jokes to tell you. These jokes were given to me by my neighbor Danny, and they are so funny. In the cafeteria, there was a great big platter of apples, and the teacher put a sign on the apples and said, "Take only one apple. God is watching." Down at the other end of the line at the cafeteria was a big platter of chocolate chip cookies, and a little girl put a sign on that, "Take as many as you want. God is watching the apples." A little girl was talking to her teacher about whales, and the teacher was saying, whales are very large animals, but they don't have a throat big enough to swallow a human. And the little girl stated that Jonah was swallowed by a whale. And irritated, the teacher reiterated that a whole whale could not swallow a human. And the little girl says, "Well, when I get to heaven, I'll ask Jonah." And the teacher said, "Well, what if Jonah went to hell?" And the little girl said, "Then you ask him." A kindergarten teacher was observing her classroom, drawing their pictures, and she'd go from desk to desk, and she said to one little girl, "What are you drawing?" And she says, "I'm drawing God." And the teacher said, "But no one knows what God looks like." And the little girl, without looking up at the teacher and taking her eye of her paper, says, "He will in a minute." A Sunday school teacher was discussing the 10 Commandments with her 5 and 6 years old, and after she explained the commandment to honor your mother and father, she says, is there a commandment for you boys and girls how to treat your brothers and sisters? And without missing a beat, one little boy, the oldest of the family, said, yes, thou shalt not kill. One day a little girl was sitting watching her mother and saw her mother had some white hair sticking out of her brunette head. And the little girl says, why? And the mother says, well, every time that you do something wrong and make me cry or unhappy, one of my hairs gets white. And the little girl said after a long time, well, how come all of Grandma's hairs are white? A teacher was giving a lesson on the circulation of blood, and she said, children, if I should stand on my head, all the blood would rush to my head and my face would get red. But how come when I stand on my feet, the blood doesn't rush to my feet? And a student said, your feet aren't empty. Well, let's see if we get time for one more. Yeah, the teacher was trying to get the children to buy the group picture of the class, the photograph, and she says, why? In later years, you can say, there's Jennifer, she grew up to be a lawyer. There's Michael, he grew up to be a doctor. And a voice in the back row said, and there's teacher, she's dead. I think we got them all in. We love you folks, and we want you to be the great people that you can be. And we want you to pray for your enemies, and the first thing in the morning, spend your alone time with God, and throughout the day, count your pure thoughts. How many can you get in a day? Can you beat me? I would say that I got about 500 today. Can you beat that? I want you to. And pray for your enemies, and sing hymns, and have pure thoughts. And remember, spend your alone time with God the first thing in the morning, and fill yourself with the Holy Spirit. Okie dokie. You're a great person, and I know that, and I'm here to remind you of that, and I'm here to cheer you up. Hi there, everybody. This is an encephalous shot, no head. And I'm here to cheer you up. I could even cheer up George McDermott way down in Washington, D.C. Because I am your friend and I care about you. And I know that you've got everything inside of you to be totally happy. And I know that you are getting closer and closer to the secret. You're looking for it more and more in the right place. The right place is not the theater, the right place is not movies, the right place is not television. Those are all bad things, and they all cost money. The good stuff that I'm talking to you about is free. And where are you going to find it? In yourself, inside of you. My prayer in church this morning, let's see if I taped it. I didn't videotape it, but I may have audio taped it. There it is. At the bottom of the service, we have prayers and joys and concerns. And this was my prayer. And will you also, folks, just a second, let me play it for you again.
Let us all pray for John McGee that he's one with God. Amen.
Let us all pray for John McGee that he is one with God. All right, now let's turn to you. And let us pray for you that you be one with God. And what are the secrets? How do you do it? You remember the kid game, button, button, who's got the button? You're getting cold, 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 colder. Now you're getting warm, 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 hot. You got it. The secret is every day, the first thing, you sit down and you spend your time alone with God. And you find all that wealth. You have never seen such wealth. You have never seen such beauty. You have never seen such accomplishment as will come when you sit down and spend your alone time with God every morning. It's as simple as that. And have your little notebook, and have your pen. Talk it over with God. Ask God the questions. Don't expect an immediate answer. God will answer you in time. Probably the next morning. It happens very often. The next morning you'll get the answer. And then, throughout the day, you count pure thoughts. And I mean count pure thoughts. You want me to give you an example? I'll take the last line of this hymn. Join me in glad adoration. How's that for a pure thought? Say that 500 times a day. If you would like the help of the Glendora Happy Book, just call for it. The Glendora Happy Book is so good. It really, really has the answers. But you have to do it. It's not just a fun book to read. You have to read it one paragraph probably a day. And then you count blessings. Count blessings, count blessings, count blessings. .com, let's count a few blessings. 1, the temperature's 30 degrees, and here it is the end of January. 2, you're alive, you're born, you're healthy. 3, we have kitty cats and little puppy dogs. You don't like puppy dogs? Oh, all right. Do you like the people? Can you come over here and say hello to the people? With your beautiful fur and your beautiful green eyes. Oh, what lovely green eyes. This is little.com. 3. Then we have food, then we have clothing, and then we have a nice home. We have 3.5 acres here, folks. Isn't that great? And .com and I, we go out and we walk the estate. And we just came back from exercising the 1980 Lincoln. 379 miles on that 1980 Lincoln. What a great car. Here he is, 25 years old now. He's a classic, isn't he? And he's maroon. He's just like this. So we went, exercised him up and down the road, and he loved it. He just loved it. And Tom Kilser, my neighbor, came over last night in the dark, and he's so smart and he's so strong, and he got those lugs, whatever you call them, off of the, whatever, unscrewed, and so he was able to get down on his fanny and kick the tire, and the car didn't drop down. And he got the old tire off, and I'll take it down to Bob at Walmart. Bob is terrific at Walmart, and he'll give me, I'm going to get a new Michelin. And then he put the spare tire on. The spare tire on a Lincoln is pretty fancy. The whole trunk is fancy, folks. The carpeting in the trunk of the 1980 Lincoln is that big. And it came with a toolkit, most elaborate toolkit you ever saw, even with a smock, so that if you had to, while you were out driving and on the road, you had to do something on the hood, you could put the smock over your good clothes. And it came with a beautiful booster cable. And as I found out, 300 times. If you have a Lincoln, you got to boost it quite often because there's so much luxury on that poor battery. And it came with a garage door opener with a Lincoln insignia on it. Now this is not just a Lincoln Town Car. It's a Lincoln Town Car and a Mark 6 and a Continental. And they only made them that way for a few years. And they were very expensive. And they didn't make many of them. And this was a signature series, the top of the line. So it's a great car. And the luxury in the 1993, which is a beautiful, 93 Lincoln is a beautiful car. But it doesn't have the luxury of the 1980. Not by any means. All right. So maybe you'll do that when you get counting your blessings. There will be so many good blessings that you will just get off the way I did on expatiating on them. And then you pray for your enemies. You say, oh, it's so hard to pray for my enemies. Indeed it is. But you know, it's very easy to sing a hymn to them. And a hymn is a prayer. It's very easy to sing a hymn to them. I'll sing you an example. Breathe on them breath of God until their heart is pure, until that earthly part of them glows with thy fire divine. That's not hard, is it? And the minute you pray for your enemies, you're helping yourself as much as you are your enemies, believe me. Because that's one of the things you do with your own time with God. You know, you clean yourself all out. You empty everything out that's bad, that's ugly, that's dirty. You empty it all out. And then you start rising above your enemies. And you rise so far above your enemies that you look down and you pull them up. And hooray, we got more people for our side. We got more people one with God on our side. So it's all very, very beautifully schemed and planned. Did I cheer you up? There was a platter of apples in the cafeteria, and the teacher put a sign on it and said, take only one apple. God is watching. Down at the other end of the cafeteria there was a platter of chocolate chip cookies, and a little girl put a sign on there that says, take as many as you want. God is watching the apples. And the little girl was talking to her teacher, and the teacher says, I don't care. I know the whale is a big mammal, but its throat isn't big enough to swallow a human. And the little girl says, Jonah said he was swallowed by a whale. And the teacher got irritated, and the little girl said, well, when I go to heaven, I'm going to ask Jonah. And the teacher says, well, supposing Jonah went to hell. And the little girl says, then you ask him. The teacher was trying to explain how the blood circulates through the body, and she says, why, boys and girls, if I stood on my head, you would see that all of the blood would rush to my head and my face would get very, very red. Yet, while I'm standing here on my feet, you don't see the blood rushing to my feet. Why is that? And a voice in the back of the room said, your feet aren't empty. The teacher was trying to get the children to buy the group photograph of the class, and she says, it'll be so wonderful when you grow up and you're older, and you can look down and you can say, there is Michael, he became a doctor. There's Tanya, she became a lawyer. And the voice in the back of the room says, yeah, and there's teacher, she's dead. Let's see. A kindergarten teacher was having her class draw a picture, and she was going from desk to desk looking at the pictures that the children were drawing. And she said to one little girl, what are you drawing? And the little girl says, I am drawing God. And the teacher says, but nobody knows what God looks like. And the little girl, without missing a beat and without raising her head from her desk, said, they will in a minute. A Sunday school teacher says, what commandment tells us to honor our fathers and our mothers? And the class says, thou shalt honor thy father and thy mother. And the teacher says, is there a commandment that will help us get along with our brothers and sisters in our family? And the boy, who was the oldest in the family, says, yeah, thou shalt not kill. Mommy, what are those white hairs? I see a few white hairs in your brown hair. And the mummy says, whenever you do anything that hurts me, and whenever you do anything that makes me unhappy, I get a white hair. And the little girl thought and thought. And she says, Mommy, how come Grandma's hair is all white? Well, these are the nice jokes that my neighbor gave me. I think we covered them all. I told him to the pastor this morning and laughed he did. I told him to. His sermon was so good this morning. His sermons are always good. They're divine, they're inspired, they're excellent. Yeah, that's all of them, folks. Did I cheer you up? That was my intent, to make you happy. And I'll make you happy anytime I can. You call me up on my new Verizon answering service. It's good. It's very good. I like it a lot. Is there anything else to tell you? Yeah, I'm going to send you this hymn. Let me go off and turn off the heater. This is an oscillating heater. It oscillates the way politicians do. You know, I finished that great big book. I told you that, didn't I? 145 pages. I finished it. No more books, okay? They're interesting, they're informative, they're admirable. But that's not my call. My call isn't to tell you how badly the international bankers ruined this country with a central bank called the Federal Reserve System, which is nothing federal. It's not a federal agency, folks. It is a private corporation, and it's been turned over entirely to international bankers who have one goal, and that is to enslave us and make themselves the monarchs, the tyrants. They want all of our money, they want all of our power. Okay, but that's not my call. My call is to show you that when you're one with God, that doesn't make any difference. You're going to prevail every time. Okay, here is a lovely hymn we sang in church this morning. Praise to the Lord, the Almighty, the King of creation. O my soul, praise him, for he is thy health and salvation. All ye who hear, come to his temple, draw near. Join me in glad adoration. There's your pure thought for today. And if you have others, do it. But keep your head above it all. Do not be dragged down. Do not look in the wrong places. Look in the right places inside of yourself. And stay with God. Join me in glad adoration.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this program. This program is sponsored by What is America, which means where are you going? And my name is Arnie Engen, and on my left is Edward Whitney from Fairfield, Connecticut. Welcome back on the program.
Thank you, Arnie.
And on the right here we have Albert LeBrun from Windsor, South Windsor, Connecticut.
Right.
I almost went south on that one. I had to do a silly joke there. So we enjoy having you gentlemen on the program here, which you're all part of anyway. And this hour here, we're going to go into a little different tack on the judicial system. And that is, I turn over the reins to Edward Whitney from Fairfield, Connecticut.
Okay, thank you, Arnie.
Sure.
Well, today we want to talk about judicial activism, which is also known as judicial tyranny, or judicial dictatorship, or judicial usurpation, or judicial supremacy. It's all pretty much the same thing, and it comes from the fact that the justices on the U.S. Supreme Court seem to think that they are basically God Almighty, and they don't have to follow the Constitution or any rules. They just make up the law as they go. And this, of course, is totally contrary to the Constitution. It's totally contrary to the example that we had from the United Kingdom. And in there, to this day, in the United Kingdom, the judiciary does not make law. They do not even interpret the law. The interpretation is left to the Parliament, House of Lords, House of Commons. And our Constitution was drawn with the thought that the U.S. Congress would be the one that would make the laws and figure out, what they mean. And the court's job was basically to follow them, not to interpret them, not to misinterpret them, and not to make new law out of them. And as we go through this list of cases that were decided by the Supreme Court, you'll see a disturbing trend, particularly during the last 50 years, where the Supreme Court was not only making very questionable decisions way beyond the scope of their authority, but had developed into a distinctly evil thing where, they were coming down on religion, coming down on the basic fundamental morality of our country, upsetting things, ruling against saluting the flag, and on and on. It was, like they had become traitors to our own country. And putting these all things together, this is exactly what we want to follow through and explain in some detail. Now, this whole process got started way back in 1803 in a case called Marbury, concept of judicial review of the acts of Congress. So there was no constitutional authority for this, but here's the justices on the Supreme Court saying that, well, there's nothing in the Constitution here, but we say that we have the authority to judge the acts of Congress. Oh, well.
So whether or not it's in the Constitution,
That's right.
They could make the rules.
That's right. So that is where we got started on the slippery slope that has gotten into such disastrous conditions today.
Yeah.
And that whole idea, by the way, had been considered and rejected during the Constitutional Convention. The Founding Fathers thought that there should be some consideration of this, maybe have a separate body decide whether an act then pending before Congress should be reviewed by the separate body for its constitutionality. They decided not to do that. Instead, they set up the rule that the president had the right to veto an act of Congress if he thought it was unconstitutional or for any other reason. However, the Congress had the right to overturn the veto by a two-thirds majority if they so inclined. In this case, Marbury versus Madison was a classic well, it was a political case, really. It wasn't even a legal.
The word politics comes into mind, huh?
That's right.
Okay.
Because Chief Justice John Marshall, who was then the Chief Justice, was a Federalist, and the incoming administration were early Republicans, and so they were, right away at political odds with each other.
Was the judicial system politics as usual?
Yep, it really is. They tell us that the whole idea of the judicial system is to be free of politics. Well, baloney. Yeah. You get to be a judge because you have supported the governor or the president, as the case may be, in their political ambitions, and therefore you get the nod to be the justice in the Supreme Courts, or the judges in the state Supreme Courts, or any other court. So politics, unfortunately, is very much a part of the equation. Well, things were fairly quiet in the court for a while, but there was in 1819 a case called McCulloch versus Maryland, which held that the Second Bank of the United States was constitutional. Yeah. Second Bank was really a privately owned bank, similar in nature to the Federal Reserve System today. But what's astounding about that decision is that the Constitution itself says that Congress shall regulate money and determine the value thereof. Yeah. And here they are saying, oh, no, this privately owned bank will now take over that function.
Yeah. So it's totally, you talk about an infringement. My mic fell off here. Okay, there it goes. It's got to go into that little slot there, I guess.
You got it.
A total infringement on, first, common sense. It drills holes in any aspect of common sense here and goes into brutal force.
Right.
Absolute and unconditional brutal force.
Yep.
That there's no consideration for Albert Lebrun, there's no consideration for Arnie Engen, or anything that's related to us here. They snap their fingers and you and I will dance.
That's the way they see it.
That's what they've done.
They've completely forgotten the fact that they are public servants.
Yeah. They completely, you see, they should be out there defending you against the infringement upon common sense and real justice. And they have violated every concept of it.
Right on.
And you continue, because I'm sure you have more of it in this presentation that you painstakingly put together.
Unfortunately, it gets worse and worse as we go, as you'll see.
You get to
downright satanic by the time we get to modern times.
Yeah.
And incidentally, folks, for those of you who really want to look more deeply into this, there really is an excellent book that just came out. It's called the Oxford Companion to the Supreme Court of the United States, and it's written by many, many people with the judicial background, lawyers, judges, etc. And it talks about the individuals who have served on the Supreme Court both currently and in the past, and covers a great many of the cases that the Supreme Court decided over the years. And it's a very objective book. It doesn't have a political axe to grind, but it just is very factual, very well written, and I'd highly recommend it to you. There's another book also that came out recently, which is called Men in Black by Mark Levin, and this is highly critical of the Supreme Court and the decisions that it's made over the years, and it shows that judges are people, and a lot of the decisions that they have made have been 5-4. It's like showing how close some of these decisions really are. It's not a matter of clear-cut logic and fact and law. It's a matter of personal beliefs and feelings. And so these 5 think it's this, and these 4 think it's that. That's how a lot of the cases are actually decided in practice. And in 1856, shortly before the Civil War, we had the famous Dred Scott versus Sanford case, which the court held that Dred Scott, who was a Negro slave, had no standing in court to sue for his freedom because he was not a citizen of the United States. Rather, he was the property of his owner.
Yeah.
So that
So
was
you couldn't sue.
Right.
He couldn't represent himself as a human being here because
That's
he was
right.
property.
He
like,
wasn't
like
even
this
a
chair here.
person. That's right. He was a piece of chattel.
Yeah.
And had the same general status as a piece of, say a cow.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
right. And therefore could not bring suit on his own behalf, even though he'd been with his master out of the South for some years.
Yeah.
And was an intelligent man. He was basically still a nobody as far as the court was concerned.
Yeah. And in a sense now, remote in a sense, but you are being treated like a chattel.
Right, exactly.
I mean, you're like a soccer ball out there, and they kick you any old way. These lawyers are the ball team, and they kick him around any old way they want to.
Sure.
Yeah.
At their whim.
You know, it's like they're saying, "Whoa, you miserable swine! How dare you come there into my court and ruffle the feathers? Oh, wow! What are you, or something?" You know?
Yes. Yeah. Very good. I'm glad you have taken the time to do this.
Do I make myself clear?
Yeah.
I hear that many times in court
Yeah.
during the trial.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, okay. In 1870, an interesting development started to take place at Harvard Law School, which, of course, is generally considered to be one of our most prestigious law schools in the country.
Yes.
There, a philosophy was developed that the U.S. Constitution was not a fixed document that we could read and take literally, but rather it was to be considered an evolving document. It was kind of like the whole evolutionary theory that was then being taught at that time. That's right. So, so the Constitution took on the aspects, according to them, of a living thing that changed over the years, even though the printed word was the same.
Yeah.
So therefore, what it says in plain English and what the founding fathers said was their interpretation of it really became less and less relevant, and rather what is significant is how we, the big shot judges, decide on the thing little by little, and if that stands the Constitution on the head, so be it. It's an evolving document.
Yeah.
And it's been pretty much downhill from there.
Well, you have had this case going for how long?
15
years.
Yeah.
So it's degenerated in 15 years to a more suppressive
Right.
crackdown on anyone who has a real case, a real truthful, and has done his homework, such as Albert has here. And then we come down into this kind of stuff that you can do with Albert anything you want to.
Just about, yeah. And bear in mind that these cases that we're talking about in this presentation are all U.S. Supreme Court cases, but it should be emphasized that the entire legal system from top to bottom, right down to the lowest municipal court, has been polluted to the same extent.
Yeah.
And it's really a very, very sad situation.
Yeah, boy, I'll say it is.
Yep.
This is amazing. I mean, it's not amazing to us three here, but it is still amazing. Even if you know a lot about it and we do all this research, it's still, how can it really be? It's like it's hard to get it through your head, because it's so fraudulent.
Yep.
So we're here in 1896.
That's right. Well, of course, the whole idea is our country was founded on the idea of being the rule of law. Whatever the law was, that was it, not rule of men.
Yeah.
And what's happened here, even at the Supreme Court level, is men decided that they are now above the law. Our personal beliefs, our prejudices and so forth, this is how the Constitution will be developed.
Yeah.
And worse yet, they couple that with the concept of, whatever they decide in this case is now binding on subsequent courts on similar cases. So Now it's not just a matter of the factual situation if they're the last rule on a particular case, but now whatever that rule was applies to subsequent cases and is likewise binding on all inferior courts to them. And so they then are creating law
Yeah. Yeah.
by that methodology.
Well, you see here, Albert, what we're trying to do is to demonstrate to you that you're not an exception to the rule. And so we have a broad aspect application of the fraudulent judicial system from centuries ago here, you know, and I use that in the true sense, you know. And then we come through this corridor of crud as far as judicial system, and you and I are being washed down into this cesspool because they don't give a hooty-dooty about you and me. But you see how that, so you're not singled out there. There's a lot of cases, but you are an exception in the sense that you stood. You didn't get washed down, and you're still there. And that I appreciate, you know, more and more that we have people like Albert Lebrun who dares to stand in the gap. You know, and that's where this thing here comes. So you have all this into the historical background here.
Yep.
And you build it up, and you build it up, and the parallelism is unmistakable.
Yep.
So there you have, you know, 1896 here.
I just want to mention this case, Plessy versus Ferguson, a civil rights case, really. And the court at that point declared as constitutional a Louisiana law which required railroads to provide separate but equal accommodations for the white and colored races. In other words, intentionally setting separate spaces on, in this case, the trains, so that the whites would be in this part of the train and the blacks in this part of the train. And that was, you know, followed as a norm for many years until a later Supreme Court case says, oh, wait, you know, we messed up back then in 1896. We got a new rule right now.
Rosa Parks is the one,
Yes.
the one who changed the...
That's right.
Right?
Yeah, we'll come to that case in due course as we get down the road.
Yeah.
But see, there's a clear example. The Supreme Court would have us believe that they are infallible, but you know, as times change and then as the individuals on the court changes, the decisions change. But the Constitution is exactly the same as it was, right?
Well, it's like
Hasn't changed.
mathematics, that 2 and
Right.
2 is, how long has it been in force?
Yep.
You know, a few years, right?
Right.
Yep. Another key case occurred in 1937, right in the midst of the New Deal. The case was the National Labor Relations Board versus Jones and Laughlin Steel Corporation.
They were located in Bridgeport. They had a division in Bridgeport, no?
I don't know, but they certainly did in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, indeed.
And in any case, the court held at that time that intrastate commerce activities, that is to say within a single state, can affect interstate commerce, thus allow Congress to control intrastate commerce as well as interstate. See, the Constitution, as you recall, limited Congress's jurisdiction only to commerce between two states. In other words, actual physical trade, movement of goods from one state to another. Now the court says, well, not only can Congress do that, but they can control things that take place within the confines of a single state because it affects commerce between the states, you know. So this is a major expansion of power. And the Congress since then has been enacting law after law after law regulating stuff within a single state on the strength of this squirrely Supreme Court decision. And it's totally contrary to the clear meaning and intent of the Constitution, contrary to what the Founding Fathers had in mind, totally outside of the conceived structure of what the federal government does versus what the states do. It's the way we got down the slippery slope, and it gets worse and worse as we go, folks.
Yeah, okay, continue, Edward.
In 1944, during World War II, there was a case called Korematsu versus the United States. earlier in the war, President Roosevelt had issued an executive order to imprison more than 110,000 Japanese Americans, people, American citizens who
Yeah.
are of Japanese ancestry.
There was also, if you
who-
excuse me, there was also a lot of Italians.
There were a few Italians and a few
Yeah.
Germans as well, but mostly
Yeah.
it was the Japanese.
Yes.
And Roosevelt said that, well, they can be and will be interred in these concentration camps for the duration of the war.
Yeah.
And that, of course, is wildly contrary to Americans' philosophy of life, that in the Constitution itself says, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property
Yeah.
without due process of
Yeah.
law.
Yeah.
And so here comes the President of the United States on his own initiative without
Yeah.
even act of Congress,
Yeah.
saying, okay, all you Japanese Americans into the concentration camps, you go. I mean, that was...
Constitution, what is that?
That's right. So, I mean, here you have a clear violation of the Fifth Amendment, the due process of law
absolutely.
requirements.
And it's unreal. And I want you to take notice of what we're doing here, Write pro and con to Quo Vadis America, P.O. Box 2207, Meriden, Connecticut 06450, and express yourself.
Yep. So if the Supreme Court had been following the Constitution at all, that executive order had been overturned just like that, no question about it.
Yeah.
And to this day, we are, embarrassed as
Yeah.
a nation
Yeah.
that we did such a terrible thing to our
Yeah.
fellow citizens
Yeah.
for the mere fact that they happen to be of Japanese ancestry.
Yes. Yeah. It's unreal what's going on. You're quiet over there.
Yeah.
Are you listening to the-
I'm listening very good. I know most of those cases myself.
I'm sure you do, Albert. I'm
right.
I'm the least informed of the two of you here, but we did this from the background here, and Ed has spent all these hours to put this thing together so that we can illustrate your case even more than you can yourself
Right.
by this
You're right.
example.
Yep.
See? Yeah. Okay, Edward.
Then in 1947, there was the case of Everson versus the Board of Education, which established a wall of separation of church and state. The U.S. Constitution says that the federal government will not establish a national religion. In other words, there would be nothing in the United States equivalent to the Church of England that was found in England.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it also says that it will do nothing to impair the right of religious observation by individuals as they see fit. So now along comes the Supreme Court in 1947 saying that, oh wow, Thomas Jefferson talked in one of his letters about separation of church and state, and so that letter was now taken as the logic and the theory to really start the drive to wipe out any form of religious experience anywhere in any public function. This is diabolical.
Yes.
I mean, it's not even, sensible.
Yeah.
But it's a trend that is continuing on almost without interruption for the last 50-plus years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then in 1954, there was the case of Brown versus Board of Education, which ordered desegregation and basically reversed the earlier Plessy decision. This really was a judicial coup. The federal government has no constitutional authority over education. The word education isn't even mentioned in the Constitution to begin with.
Yeah.
And it's really a function that is the proper authority of the states and the towns. So here comes the Supreme Court, they're God Almighty people with the black robes, saying that, oh, no, this is a federal authority now, not a state issue, and you have to do away with this separate but equal stuff that we ourselves had decided back in 1896 in Plessy versus Ferguson. So it's a double whammy here, they're invading into an area which they have no constitutional authority to begin with, and secondly, it's a reversal of their own earlier decision. So like, who's crazy here? You know?
Yes, yes, yeah. Right. Wow.
So, and it goes downhill from here.
Yeah, steeper
Yep,
into the abyss.
that's right. In 1961, there was the case Poe versus Ullman. Planned Parenthood had backed a suit directed at a Connecticut law which prohibited the sale and use of contraceptives. The U.S. Supreme Court dismissed the case because the law had not been enforced against the principals themselves. And Justice Harlan also raised the issue of invasion of privacy. See, the issue was, do people have the right to privacy in their own bedrooms? You know, and if they want to use contraceptives, is that something that they have a legal right to do or not? And so there's nothing in the Constitution, U.S. Constitution, about privacy or about contraceptives or any of this material. But nevertheless, the Supreme Court says, oh, well, we're not going to overturn that law because Planned Parenthood itself was not a party to the original litigation. And that was the rationale.
Some rationale.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
see, how did they come up with rationals or irrationality, more descriptive? Then what is the mindset if it isn't absolute madness?
Well, there is no underlying logic to it. See, that's the whole point. It gets down to the personal opinions of these individual justices. And as mentioned earlier, many of the cases were narrowly decided by 5 to 4 votes.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So sometimes one individual on the court changes, and the previous decision is overturned.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a mess out there, folks. And that's why we're doing this program here on the Cold Waters America, because we're very interested in the direction. Where are you going, America? And moreover, the country itself, the physical aspect, is staying here as it usually has for endless centuries. But where are we as a people moving? What is our function in life? Why do we sit silently by and let the world drift by us here? What legacy are you leaving for your family? And moreover, what legacy are you leaving to your grandchildren? What world are you going to leave them? Are you going to sit by and let them fall into the pit? You talk about bringing up children here. You're talking about responsibility. You're talking about educating your children. And here, you take all the cares, that safety, walking to school, you got to take the school bus, you got to have proper drivers, you got to have good roads. You have to have all this kind of safety things. But the biggest issue of safety is, what is America? You are neglecting your responsibility in an overwhelming and irrefutably provable manner. That is my statement to you, public, out there.